What's up, everybody? It's me, Johnny, here with my immediate reactions to UFC 308. The card wrapped up about an hour or so ago, but I needed to have some breakfast, and to be quite honest, I needed to decompress it a little bit. That was obviously a very hard watch for me, and I'm sure it was for many of you out there as well, but you know, Rob's my mate. We do the podcast together. I always get nervous for his fights, but seeing it go down like that is something that I never want to see, and I was speechless when I was live streaming the Fight Companion. But I committed to doing videos while Rob was preparing and overseas fighting Khamzat, so that's why I'm uploading this video today. We'll start off talking about Rob's fight, because I'm sure many of you want to hear my thoughts on that. Then we'll talk about the Topuria fight against Holloway in the main event, and then cover the rest of the main card. I'm not going to talk about the prelims because I haven't watched them yet. They started at like 1 a.m. my time. I woke up at 4:30 a.m. for the main card. So let's start off with the Rob fight against Khamzat Chimaev. Chimaev submits Rob in the first round, and he started off that fight like we all expected him to. They were trading a little bit in the beginning, but Khamzat went for that takedown pretty quickly. And though Rob was doing okay, Khamzat was just very aggressive, very strong, like we've seen him be in the past. The big question was always, could Rob get out of that first round? That opening round was always going to be the most dangerous. Even part of the second round was always going to be the most dangerous, because we saw how aggressive Khamzat can be. Like, he's proven that. People are saying, oh, now we know he's the real deal. Khamzat was always the real deal. He was always the real deal. He's undefeated for a reason. Yes, his fight against Usman, he was on short notice and he was moving up, but he's done that to most of his opponents. Gilbert Burns' fight a bit different, but he's done that against most of his opponents. So I don't know what we were expecting. Maybe the question was, at middleweight, this is his first real challenge and opponent. Can he keep that up against a bigger guy? But he proved that he could. Now, Rob was doing nice scrambling, you know, for a little bit there. Khamzat was really trying to go in for that rear naked choke from the back, and Rob was managing to swivel around and swing around a little bit to get out of those positions. But Khamzat just kept up with it. He kept up with it. He had Rob against the cage. He did throw an elbow. I don't know whether that elbow caused issues to Rob's jaw initially, but then when he went in for the neck crank, he tapped Rob out very, very quickly. It wasn't even like a couple of seconds and then Rob had to tap out. It was almost instantaneous. And we all suspect it's because something happened to Rob's jaw. Again, whether it was because of the elbow or the actual neck crank itself, he might have dislocated his jaw, broke his jaw. Rob has had teeth stuff done in the past as well. I don't know whether that contributed to it, but there were photos that were uploaded later where Rob was all bloody with his jaw. People were like, oh, Khamzat took out a bunch of Rob's teeth. If you've watched the podcast for any length of time, you know that Rob has had a lot of teeth stuff done, and a few of those teeth were already missing, but clearly something happened to his jaw. Khamzat's squeeze, is clearly just incredibly strong. He did something to Rob's jaw or whatever it was. Rob tapped and Khamzat wins in the first round by submission. So first, I really do hope that Rob is okay. I hope that his jaw isn't messed up too much. It's very sad seeing it go down like that. But guys, Rob's 33. He'll be back at it again. We've seen what's happened with fighters like Dustin Poirier. He'll be back. I know that he'll be back. This is a letdown, but I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next, but hopefully that he rests up, you know, recovers his jaw, whatever's wrong with it. I hope he is okay. I can't promise you when the podcast is going to come back. I have not yet talked to Rob. I'll let you know as soon as I have any updates on the community tab with what happens with the podcast for the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I'll update you. I just really do hope that Rob is okay. But talking about Khamzat, yeah, like, this guy deserves the title shot in middleweight, in my opinion. I think he deserves it more than Sean Strickland because just of the fashion of how that fight went down and finished, right? This is Rob Whittaker, boys. Like, in the past 10 years, he's only ever lost to two people, Israel Adesanya and Dricus du Plessis, who obviously one was the champ and the other went on to be the champion. So for Khamzat to do that to Rob, in my eyes, cemented him for the next title opportunity. Whether it's next or whether they do want to run Dricus and Sean back maybe in Sydney, Australia, and then do Khamzat after that, Khamzat has to get a title opportunity. He just has to at this stage. And I personally think he deserves it right now a bit more than Sean. Sean's victory over Paulo Costa wasn't as impressive. And if you keep listening to what Dana White says, or said about this fight, even though numerous times he was like, yeah, Sean Strickland's getting the opportunity, but he always left that door open. He always left that door open and was saying stuff like, you never know what's going to happen in the fight. Let's see how it plays out. The fact that it played out like that, in my opinion, they're going to shoot Khamzat right to that title opportunity. I would like to see him fight Dricus in Sydney, Australia. I think that would be very cool. But there is every chance to have Sean fight there. The only thing is that I don't believe Sean wants to fight in Australia, possibly because of the tax issues and a bunch of other stuff. So if Sean doesn't want to fight there, then put Khamzat there. Khamzat's actually already set to come to Australia later this year. He has a tour booked here. So he doesn't have visa issues like people are suspecting. He'd be able to fight in Australia. It just depends what the UFC wants to do. If I was the bookmaker or the fight maker, I would make Dricus versus Khamzat Chimaev in Sydney, Australia, and Sean should be fighting someone else. Maybe Sean and Rob could fight. I think that would be very good. We were meant to get that fight. Like, it probably should have been Rob versus Sean Strickland, but Sean wanted to wait for the title, and then Khamzat got in there. So I would like to see Rob and Sean fight because it's a fight that we haven't seen yet, and Rob's fought a lot of people, a lot of other fighters in that top 10 in the middleweight division. So that would be my hope, my guess. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But now let's go to the main event, Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. So my prediction was that Ilia Topuria was going to KO Max Holloway. The dude has dynamite in his hands. Like, he is legitimately the real deal. Maybe there were questions after he knocked out Volkanovski because Volk was just knocked out recently by Islam Makhachev, right? So people were like, oh, he was in the right place, da-da-da-da-da. Maybe that's why Ilia got the better of him. But he fought a prime Max Holloway that just did what he did against Gaethje at UFC 300. This should have silenced any doubts that anyone would have had about Ilia Topuria. He is the real deal. And it's not just his boxing. Like, his boxing is phenomenal at next level, and we saw so much of that in this fight. But his jiu-jitsu is legit as well. He straight away took Max down and grappled with him, and he made it look easy. Now, stepping before that, I do want to say, Ilia stood true to his word. He was very confident. He said, I'm going to stand in the middle of that ring and point down, and Max is going to have to decide whether he trades with me. And Max didn't. Max didn't want any of that at the beginning. He did the wave of the red flag like he was a matador, so that was a cool moment. But Max didn't want to stand there and trade with Ilia initially, and Ilia stood true to his word. So I do just want to recognize that. But this fight, obviously we saw what happened in the third round, but I can combine the first two rounds by saying this was a clinical boxing display by both. Max is huge in featherweight. He's massive. The height discrepancy between both of them was insane. Max looked massive compared to Ilia Topuria. And because of that, because of his range, he was able to utilize that. He did what Max always did. He had high volume, worked the combination. He was working the kick against, the side kick against Ilia Topuria really nicely, the spinning kick as well. But then Ilia, when he gets into the pocket, and especially when he gets someone up against the cage, he has so much power, so much venom in his strikes. And he was also battering the lead leg of Max that whole fight, which must have had an effect. Now, there was a moment in the first round where people thought that Ilia might have actually dropped Max, but when we rewatched it, he definitely did slip. I still would have given that first round to Ilia. It was very close, though. Give it to Ilia on Max. It's a nothing burger at the moment. Like, it doesn't matter in the end. But I probably would have given that first round to Ilia because even though Max threw more and landed more, his punches were more damaging. His strikes were more effective. It's like watching a Sean Strickland fight when he lands more. I think Max is the better boxer than Strickland, but when Strickland lands a lot more, but the other guy lands the better strikes, it's very hard to call those. So I understand why people were like, oh, I thought it was Max, and others were like, oh, I thought it was Ilia. I thought the first two rounds went to Ilia. It was very close, but both just showed amazing skill when it came to the boxing. Again, Max from distance, Ilia up close in the pocket, especially up against the cage. But then that third round, the big right from Topuria wobbled Max, and then he was a little bit troubled there. He was teeing off on him, and then the big left hook, which knocked Max out. This was not only the first official knockdown for Max, that Dustin Poirier knockdown probably should have counted, but officially, not only was this the first official knockdown for Max, he was knocked out. His first knockout ever. Absolutely insane. Ilia Topuria is the real deal, and I don't know who can trouble him in featherweight. I really don't know. Clearly, they're going to have the rematch with Volk. Volk was standing in the cage afterwards, and Ilia was saying, to his credit, that you deserve it, da-da-da-da-da. So they're clearly going to run it back. That might be a Sydney thing, but I actually think that they should be trying to push for the card in Spain. probably in Madrid, Santiago Bernabeu, close the roof, and you can have that feel in the stadium that Dana would probably prefer, but they should absolutely have Ilia fight in Spain while he's red hot. He had Sergio Ramos in the crowd cheering him on and in the cage. Like, that's a whole nother level of celebrity in the Spanish world and the football world. He should be fighting in Madrid next, sometime soon. Don't get me wrong, I would love to see him versus Volk in Sydney, Australia. But again, you have Dricus available there for probably a fight either against Sean Strickland or Khamzat Chimaev. So it's going to be one of those two in Sydney, Australia, in my opinion. But I think you have to have Ilia fight in Madrid in Spain, 100%. For me, when it comes to Max, I think that he should go to lightweight. Like, I don't know. We've said this a lot, like when Max cuts down to featherweight, he looks really gaunt, he looks really skinny, but he always manages to rehydrate well and bounce back. But still, he's skinny, and as I said, with the height discrepancy, he's a big guy. He's a big guy for that division. He did so well against Justin Gaethje at lightweight. I think he would do really well at lightweight and maybe make him less likely to get knocked out. But Max has always had a granite chin. It's just Topuria is something different. Though, the fact that he is now knocked out, maybe that starts to be the start of his decline. I don't know. But he's done so much in featherweight. He's already fought Volk 3 times. He's now lost to Topuria. I would like to see him move to lightweight, but let's see what happens. Moving to the rest of the fights. Ankalaev versus Aleksandar Rakić. It was an okay fight. Not as boring that I think a lot of people made it out to be, or that thought that it would be, because Ankalaev did what he said he would do against Pereira if they were to fight. He actually stood there and traded. There was no takedowns, there was no wrestling or grappling attempts or anything like that. He actually stood there and traded with Aleksandar Rakić, which was good to see. Now, I thought Rakić started off really well, just like in his Jiří Procházka fight. In that first round, I thought that he won. They were both battering each other with kicks, to be honest. But I thought just, Rakić landed more. His high kicks were really working really nicely. Ankalaev was working the body kicks really nicely. Ankalaev's left straight, by the way, is so powerful, man. It's so quick. He has venom in those shots, and he really started to work that left straight as the fight went on. But I thought that Rakić had more volume. He had the cleaner strikes in the first round, so I would have given that to him. But the next two I gave to Ankalaev. He started to find his rhythm. Again, that straight left was working really nicely. He started working the combinations. He kept working the kicks as well. Rakić was keeping up with him, but to be honest, in the second round and then in the third round, they were fairly low output rounds. So the fact that he won, I agree that he won. He won the second and he won the third. Ankalaev should fight for the title next. He should be fighting Alex Pereira. It's an inevitability. It probably should have been before. I'm glad that it wasn't, because that Roundtree fight with Pereira was insane. But now it's going to happen. It's absolutely going to happen. Though that wasn't the most exciting way to go about it, in my opinion. That second round and that third round, especially the third round, the output wasn't that high. It wasn't that exciting. At least at the end of the third round, Ankalaev managed to throw some knees and strikes to make it a little bit better. But I would say, yeah, he has to fight Pereira. Absolutely. I don't know what Rakić does next. If I was to try and guess the division, I think Jiří should versus Jan. We keep forgetting about Jan Blachowicz, but he should be fighting someone in that top 5. I think Jamal Hill should run it back, or run it with Khalil Roundtree, because they were meant to fight, obviously, and that fight got called off. So I think Hill and Roundtree would be good. But I don't know who Rakić fights. I believe Nikita Krylov has a fight already booked. But let me know in the comments below who you think Rakić should fight, because now he's had 2 losses on the trot, knocked out against Jiří Procházka, lost to Ankalaev in a pretty, you want to call it boring, slow fight, whatever. Like, I thought it was okay in the end, but clearly not the most exciting on the main card. But that was that fight. Next up, Lerone Murphy defeats Dan Ige. Look, Dan had this in the bag, man. He dropped Lerone Murphy in the first round, and he was teeing off. I thought he could have had it, but somehow Murphy managed to recover and survived, and then he won the next 2 rounds. Some people thought that Dan maybe won, the third, for instance, but I thought it was pretty clear that Murphy won. But Dan just dropped it. He dropped the ball, and I was really, really hoping that he could have won that. So, yeah, it was a fine fight. I guess Murphy, good on him for managing to recover and going on to win the fight. He called that Josh Emmett, which I think is a good fight, top 10 fight. That's what he really wants. Though Josh Emmett has won. Like, he knocked Bryce Mitchell into the bloody shadow realm. Do you remember that knockout? That was absolutely insane. It's still imprinted into my mind. So I don't know whether Emmett would take that fight with Murphy. Maybe Emmett wants to try and fight up given that knockout. But I still think it's a good fight. Maybe Calvin Kattar as well, or even Jakadze. But I don't mind if Murphy fights in the top 10. But maybe he should be fighting Kattar or Giga before that. But let's see what happens. It was an all right fight. And then Shara Bullet against Armen Petrosyan. I tell you what, look, a lot of people were saying quite clearly that Shara is going to win before heading into this fight. I think a lot of people were underestimating Armen Petrosyan. His kickboxing is really good. Yes, he lost his previous fight, but if you watch his fight against Duncan, who kind of like, similarly to Shara, he has unorthodox striking with his kicking in a sense. Like, Duncan's a little bit more unorthodox than Shara, but he was doing really well, you know, especially walking back on the counter with his kickboxing against Duncan. So I thought he was actually going to do pretty well against Shara. And he was doing well in the first round. I thought it was a very, very close round. This was a great kickboxing display, by the way. I really enjoyed watching this fight. But in the second round, the double spinning back fist from Shara knocking out Armen Petrosyan. I still don't want to say that Shara is the real deal, because straight after that knockout, he looked tired, bro. He looked absolutely gassed. I still don't know how Shara is going to go against the top-ranked contenders in middleweight, but I think he is getting very, very close to getting a ranked opponent. Maybe he should have one more fight into a ranked opponent, but I would like to see him fight someone in that top 15. He's so bloody active too, and kudos on it. Like, good on him for keeping so active and for continuing to fight. But that was UFC 308, at least the main card. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm going to go edit this video and have a very, very chill day and relax. Again, I'll let you know what happens with the podcast and Rob's situation and everything. I really do hope that he's okay. But until next time, this has been Johnny. Please take care of yourselves, and I will see you hopefully in the next podcast episode.